Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to break down the entrepreneurial mindset with Hubstaff's founders, Dave Nevote and Jared Brown. All right, so starting a business is very exciting. It's a new venture into something you're passionate about and something you believe in. However, for every inspiring success story you hear, there's probably 9 other startups that failed. And that's just because starting a business is hard. So we're gonna break down some key concepts with the founders of Hubstaff, which has grown into an organization that is now generating over $1 million in monthly recurring revenue. I'll also have a link down below to the company's Baremetrics dashboard so you can see that I'm not making that up. It's free to access and review so you can see Hubstaff's growth over the years. Now, let's get into the discussion. Dave, Jared, thank you so much for making some time to help me with this video. I think a lot of entrepreneurs will find it, entrepreneurs will find it incredibly helpful. I'd love to jump right into everything and start off with a question that's a little broad, but I think it's important. When you're just getting started out as an entrepreneur, what is the mindset you need to have?
Yeah, mindset you need to have. I mean, that of a killer. Right.
Killer.
I mean, you need to be like when you're imagine playing tennis or golf or whatever. You need to be in the zone. Got to be ready to get it.
Yeah. Jared, what do you think about that?
One thing I always tell other entrepreneurs that are looking to get started, they usually have a concept or two that they really are behind and excited about. And I think don't get too attached to your first concept or your first 5 concepts. Try them out, try to prove them out. Pick the best of the ones that you can come up with. Brainstorm 10 of them, come up with 20 of them. Don't fall in love with the first one that you come up with.
I was going to say that's very true because like even Hubstaff, we have right now, you would think that, the path is clear after 8 years, but it's not at all. So, I mean, you could have gone down, Jared and I could have done 100 different businesses together. I guess that just goes to show you that basically, if you're married to one idea, you can be maybe in that market, you can be in that subset, but then still go in a lot of different directions. So it's not just the one idea that you've got. It's kind of like there's a lot of variations you can path.
Yeah, and I think some of the really interesting entrepreneurial stories out there that I've heard are ones where they really looked at objectively. They sat back and they looked at the different ways they could go, different. What about if we start a business like that? And they're considering businesses across all different industries and they're applying a checklist to them. They're looking at what are the attributes of that business. And that is what Dave and I did in the early days with Hubstaff. We spent 3 months going through very carefully looking at the aspects of the business and seeing how many boxes it checked before we threw ourselves into it. I think that's a common mistake to make in the beginning, is just to throw yourself behind your first idea and give it your all. But it really wasn't the best one you could come up with. So, divorce yourself from the concept and consider many different ones before you pick a path.
So was there a certain number of things that you guys kind of threw against the wall before something stuck? Do you kind of know what that was or how many trials you had to go through before you found Hubstaff?
Well, I think number one, Dave has a good sense of what that checklist is. And we've put it in a blog post. It's one of the blog posts up on the Hubstaff blog. Mm-hmm. And he had already pretty much gone through, that checklist early on. And he did a proof of concept. He got a prototype working. He proved product market fit, and he was checking 7 or 8 of the boxes on that. So it was really, him talking to me about that over 3 months. And that at this point, when he approached me, I had already tried 3 projects on my own. I had already been approached by several other entrepreneurs that needed a developer, looking at what they were doing. So this was like concept number, 20 on my list. Wow. The things I had come up with on my own had not gained traction. Dave's was the first that was like, look, not only does this theoretically make sense, it's already being proven in the market. He had gone out and gotten traction for it. Within a very short period of time, instead of just talking about it, which is the other mistake I think a lot of entrepreneurs make, too much time just, falling in love with the concept and talking about it versus just, okay, get on with it, prove it, try it, see if this even has legs. And don't feel like if it fails, it's a failure of you. It's a failure of that concept. you'll pick another concept. There's just too much tying of yourself to the concept and not willing to look at it objectively or try other ways.
I think that's really good advice, because I imagine it could be incredibly discouraging if you get really attached to your first two ideas that are your babies and they don't work. Yes. And then it's just, why bother? Why keep doing this? But I like that. Being completely detached from everything until you find the one that actually sticks. Well, let me continue moving on forward. The next topic, and for those of you watching this video up on YouTube right now, this is based on a blog post that we have back on our website. I'm going to have that linked right down below in the video description, so you can check that out and kind of follow along with the subjects that I'm going to be hitting here in this interview with Dave and Jared. The first thing you covered in this post, Dave, this is a blog that you put together a while back that we have up, is how important it is to keep in mind that there is no safety net as an entrepreneur, and how important it is to become comfortable with risk. So how did you and Jared become comfortable with the risk here when starting this company? Was it repetition, like Jared just talked about and you just talked about a second ago? There was a lot of trial and error, a lot of attempts. So by the time you made it to Hubstaff, you were already comfortable with the risk, or what exactly was it? You were just familiar with the process at this point, but...
Well, yeah, risk is there's no safety net in my mind. It's very, you need to decide, there's a lot of different decisions that go on every day, and how are you going to market the product? How are you going to make it look? How are you going to make it feel? What's the copy going to be like? What's your brand going to be like? There's tons. So you've got to design all that. There's nobody that's just going to go and let you know the right answer. In many cases, there is no exact right answer. It's just a matter of, your ability to put together something that's decent. Hubstaff was not great in the beginning. There's a lot of changes that had to be made along the way. So no safety net means that there is not somebody telling you what to do, and you've got to be comfortable with it.
I think it's when you don't have a safety net, when it is do or die, that's when you're going to do your best work. That's when entrepreneurs when they shine. They go out and they hustle. You have to make it work. So you're going to do what it takes to make it work. And if you know that it can just fail and you'll be okay, and generally you will be okay, but you got to do what it takes to make this thing work. And I think it's that situation when you've got it on the line that you're going to go that extra distance. Because look, starting a business is one of the hardest things that you're ever going to do. It's going to take everything out of you to do this. And if you're not willing to go that extra distance to make it work, because if it fails, I'll be okay, it's probably not going to succeed. So you've got to have that feeling of no safety net and be willing to take that risk for you to stay up until 2 a.m, night after night for the next 2 years, and work on weekends, and go figure out how to build a little consulting business on the side just to bring in enough money to hire the other 2 developers you need to get through the feature set that's going to take you to the next level, and all the rest of the things you're going to do in those early years to make this business survive.
That's the killer instinct.
Going back to the killer instinct. Yeah.
Yes.
So prior to the actual beginning and the launch of your business, was there any type of preparation that you guys had to take into consideration? Were you working elsewhere or something? A lot of entrepreneurs are probably working elsewhere before getting their business launched. Is there things that they need to take into consideration before moving over to that period of developing the business itself? Anything they can prep for or anything like that? Dave?
When we started Hubstaff, we both had jobs. In addition to that, almost everybody else in the team had jobs. So this was all on the side, and that's a good way to do it, because you kind of got to feel it out until it has legs, and there's a lot of ways it can go wrong, and then it's just a matter of feel when it feels right to. And we probably did that too late. We probably did that a little too late. We probably could have cut some ties before we did, and put more emphasis on Hubstaff a little bit earlier. But it's still I've done every business I've ever had in that way.
Nice. Jared?
Yeah, I would say, I think doing consulting ahead of time, it helps prepare you for the way you'll need to think about feature requests, user complaints, having a client that tells you this isn't quite what I wanted, or this isn't quite good enough, or that you have to think as they tell you what they're wanting from this project, you got to think, how am I going to accomplish this? If you've gone through a variety of projects with different clients, you have a few years of consulting experience, I think you're going to be set up to be able to handle the challenges that are going to come in, especially doing a software business in particular. I think you've seen at that point a variety of different projects. You know generally what your clients requested. You know how to get through those challenges. So I think that's why you see a lot of software companies that were started by software agencies, because it's a natural progression and that prepared them for it. And then the other obvious piece to it is, save up some savings. So you've got yourself a runway. If your product has traction, you're going to not need more than like 18 months of runway. You don't need 3 years of runway. You should be able to get cash flow positive within a year and a half. But you're going to need some savings to get there.
All right, I'll keep us moving forward. The next topic, so again, going back to the blog on our website, the next topic that we wanted to cover was titled Surprises Along the Way. So after learning to be comfortable with these inherent risks, what are other things that kind of surprised you guys along the way to developing your business? Is there anything specific that you think you could address that other entrepreneurs could be on the lookout for, I guess, when they're at the early stages of the process for their business? Jared, you want to start first?
Yeah, this is probably the biggest surprise for me at Hubstaff. I'd like to say that we had enough foresight, and we had some of it, but not to the extent that it looks like we do now. Where when we first started in 2012, that we knew that working remotely was going to become such a big trend. In 2012, that was very atypical. I had not hired anybody overseas before to work with me on a programming project. I had not gone to the extent that now has become fairly normal. And when you talk to VCs and you hear about how VCs approach this, they're trying to look 8 or 10 years ahead for what that emerging trend is. That's going to become a very powerful, big wave to ride. And that was something that kind of surprised me, is we knew the proof of work aspect of Hubstaff related very well to remote environments. And we did talk about that in the early days, but I don't think either of us knew just how big this trend was going to be. We happened to pick one of the biggest waves, one of the biggest trends over the last 10 years. And I think, it's hard to sit in a vacuum and try to foresee what those, big trends are going to be. It was a mix of, being in the right place at the right time, and also knowing that we wanted to work this way. So it probably is a better way to work. But I never knew it'd get as big as it has in such a short period of time.
For sure. I think that goes, you always talk about how sometimes there's a little bit of luck involved, and that's always going to be a component, right? So that trend getting as big as it did was something that wasn't anticipated, but like you said, there's always some preparation that helps improve your chances of coming across that kind of luck. You know what I mean? So Dave, what about you? What do you think in terms of surprises that you came across or things along the way?
I'd say probably how hard it is to build a team and basically manage, and how much priorities, task management. We've been working on that for, and I don't mean necessarily the team as much, more so just like the processes in which, we work. It took us a while to figure that out. There's a lot of ways to do that as well. And it's just, that was a large challenge along the way. We've got a lot of stories regarding that.
Is there any advice, I guess, or any insight you guys might be able to offer someone as they approach this type of journey, as they encounter those types of surprises we were talking about from the beginning? Anything that might help them get the most out of the challenges they're going to face, how they can learn the most from them?
You just have to basically, we do a lot of testing. We've built out a really good testing, platform. And a lot of what we do is based on data, and that's the fastest way that you can learn. You're not gonna, I think a lot of people just stick to their opinions and stuff. And we try to take a note. You have to make a good guess, but I kind of take the standpoint that I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer. I don't know what headline's going to work. I don't know what, route is I could have a great idea that sounds great and it just flops. So, I mean, like the data is going to tell you the way. And I think that the advice would be to get data set up and make sure you're using those tools and you understand how to get indications very early based on data.
For sure. So it sounds like getting the proper tools in place as early as possible so you can collect the type of data that's going to help you learn.
Yeah, think about things that matter in your product and then set up testing around those things that matter.
Mm-hmm. As early as possible, it sounds like, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Jared, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think most jobs, when you first join the job, there's training. And that's how you learn what to do on the job. Being an entrepreneur, there is no training. You can find books, you can watch videos like this. It's going to help, but there are so many unique circumstances you're going to run into and so many different hats you have to wear as an entrepreneur. There's no one set of training that you can go through to prepare you for this. You're doing on the job learning. So I think being somebody who learns well, and that doesn't mean in an academic sense, that just means, you're able to adjust and shift on the fly and, take the data that's coming in, like Dave is talking about, whether that's data from testing frameworks, whether that's feedback from personnel, whether that's, things customers are telling you. You've got to take all of that. You've got to digest it and you've got to come up with a plan of action in the midst of battle. And there is not a training program for this. So I think being somebody who likes to learn, somebody who, looks for materials that can help them, but also are able to intuitively come up with good enough answers for the problem at hand. That's what it is. Being an entrepreneur is somebody that's solving problems they've never seen before on a daily basis and doing that dozens of times a week. That's being a successful entrepreneur. And you're constantly learning.
So the data is very important. All of these things are very important. Is there anything kind of on a smaller scale that you guys do personally to help you learn as much as you can from specific situations? It's like a journal, taking down specific notes about something you noticed. Anything small or anything that you guys do personally to help take away the most you can from a specific situation?
My thinking is mostly forward. So I think it's important to take time to basically just disconnect and try to focus on one small thing. So you have a website, you're trying to figure out what should go on your homepage. It's important to think about that very deeply and for an extended period of time and make that the only thing you have to focus on. And then, that'll get you to a more closed out scenario where you're able to kind of go from start to finish and get all of your thoughts because it all starts flowing. So I guess that's what I do a lot, and my advice to basically small thing I would do in my own kind of life to apply to,
Jared, what about you?
Yeah, to kind of follow on what Dave was saying there, which I think is right in line with how I kind of approach it too. It's not so much taking notes to then, kind of get things in place and figure out the answer. I think it's thinking through the answer. Usually that comes somewhat intuitively. And then I like to write it down. I like to communicate it in a written form because it's a way to prove it to myself. This is what I'm thinking, but then when I write it down and actually see it on the screen, do I still agree with what I'm thinking? It's like a way to double check myself. And then the end result is I've double checked myself. I've maybe altered it a little bit in the process. And then I have something that's deliverable to that other person and is hopefully succinct and, efficient way for them to get that information versus having a meandering phone call where we kind of, over a course of an hour kind of go through it. This is more of the appetizer to that entree and lets me get my thoughts down on paper.
I like how you put it as kind of having your initial thoughts as a reference point and then kind of comparing what your final thoughts are later through the process and seeing how they compare and what changed. I think that's a really good piece of advice.
There's one more example there that I want to share. The speccing process is interesting and good because basically that helps you think through things in advance and then basically write that down, discuss it as a team. And one more really important thing about that is that the thing that I like to do a lot is to start with the end, kind of like reverse thinking. So you what's the actual goal? And we start every spec with the actual goal. So it's like, just kind of keeps you in line throughout what is the goal here is the goal. And, the more deep you can be with that goal, I think the better decisions you make in the beginning.
And that's something that we kind of borrowed from the development world, but we at Hubstaff, we every project gets spec, whether it's a marketing project, whether it's something the support team's working on. So we've adopted that and used that everywhere. And I think Dave's right. It's very effective.
Awesome. So continuing moving forward, the next topic I want to cover is the entrepreneurial skill set. So basically the skill set that every entrepreneur needs to develop, especially early on in the process of building out their business. I'm going to put a graphic up on screen here. So for those of you who are watching, you can kind of keep track of something that's actually back on our blog in a bit more detail. So again, link down in the description, but I will have something for reference here on screen. Basically in the blog, we outline 7 key skills, and there's obviously a lot more skills, even more than those 7 that entrepreneurs need to master and develop over time. But the key ones that we cover on our article are being driven, focused, decisive, independent, genuine, flexible, and knowledgeable. Now, out of that list that we cover, Dave, are there maybe 1 or 2 that you would like to speak to that you think are very critical for an entrepreneur to develop early on?
I think it was the third one you said, but I forget what it was. What was it?
Oh, let me see. So I got my list. So decisive?
Yeah. It's just very important to be able to make a decision and not hem-haw around. I mean, you got to think it through, but when you make it, you got to be confident and, go with it. And, like there's decisions Jared, how many decisions do you think you made on a day in your job?
Dozens.
Everyone does. Dozens of important ones. What I'm saying? So just get things, make a decision and go,
I think that's really important. Yeah. Because otherwise you're just going to slow yourself down dramatically for overthinking every single decision. Right. Yeah. Right. Jared, do you want me to repeat any of them again?
No, I'm good. Okay. And I think to Dave's point too, and this is something that I heard somewhere, I don't remember where, but a common trap to fall into is to think that every one of those decisions is of equal value, and they're not. Most of them are actually not as high impact as you think. Maybe that grumbling employee, the issue they're having, it's going to be easy to focus on that, or it's going to be easy to focus on a customer that is complaining about something. But, at the end of the day, there are actually only a few decisions you need to make every week or every month that are very high impact to the business. So if you belabor each decision, you're not only moving too slowly, you're not allowing yourself to spend the time that you need to on the high impact decisions where you really should be focusing. You spread yourself too thin. And so I would say that that's very important to realize that a lot of these decisions, even if you're not making the best answer, you're not coming up with the best answer, making the best choice, it's okay, because it doesn't actually, the margin for error is a little higher on those, and the impact that they'll have is lower. So you can make that quicker decision and feel comfortable doing that. The final thing that I'll say is, I think a trait that's not on your list there, and this is something every entrepreneur knows that's been through it, the stress level that is involved. I don't know what the right word for this is, but you have to be able to be very tolerable of a high level of stress. It's going to be stressful being an entrepreneur. That's not going to go away. You've got to have your ways to handle that, your outlets for that, and not let it become a problem for you. But you're going to handle a higher level of stress than the average person working at a company. They get to, be done at the end of the day. There is no being done at the end of the day for you as an entrepreneur.
The next section that we wanted to cover are kind of getting a little deeper into the whole mindset discussion. So Dave and Jared, I know you both have an outline of kind of the important motivators for every entrepreneur. We don't have to cover every single one that we outline there, but if there's 1 or 2 that you feel like you'd like to speak to, and Jared, we can start with you. I do have the reference doc here, so let me actually kind of bring up some of these.
Perfect.
So we have how to develop an entrepreneurial mindset. We have find your why, protect your time. We have understand your strengths and your weaknesses. We have make decisions quickly, which is something we kind of spoke to a little bit ago when talking about traits, so we don't need to really cover that one. Stop being afraid of failure. Always look for networking opportunities. And then finally, never stop learning. So those are kind of the sections we outline in our blog. Is there anything in there that you guys think you would like to speak to, that you have personal experience with, that is important to you? Jared?
I think the find your why is important. I like that that's number one on there. I think people assume a lot of times that entrepreneurs are starting businesses because, what do businesses do? They make money. And so they want to, make a lot of money. Let's go start some businesses. That alone, and I know this is cliche to say, a lot of people say this, that alone though is not going to keep you going day after day, year after year. There has to be some other reason that you're doing that. For me personally, it's a creative outlet. I've always loved creating stuff that other people get to use, and not just a few other people. I want to create stuff that thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of other people get to use. One of the kind of corny things I'll do, if my family and I go to a sporting event or a concert, I'm like, look around at all the people here. How many people do you think are here? They're like, oh, it looks like 30,000, 40,000 people. I'm like, yeah, like 5 times as many. It's like 5 stadiums with this amount of people use our software every day. And that's something I get to be involved with, and help run. And so that's what keeps me going. I mean, the money aspect is interesting. I think that's a part of it, but you have to have other pieces to your motivation. A mission that your company is on, or something internally that you have a desire that will only be fulfilled if you go start this business and start doing these activities every day.
That's got to be, I like how you put that. That's got to be incredibly motivating to put it into terms of here's a stadium filled with people. This looks crazy, like this crowd of people, and more than what's here is using the product that we created. Putting it into perspective like that has to be incredibly motivating. So I like that. Dave, anything you'd like to touch on?
I think that Jared will know this one, but I think anybody that works with me probably know this one. But protecting, your time is my number one, and just kind of understanding. Basically, Jared was touching on it a little bit, but basically, what's important, what's not. There's a book called the 80-20 Principle that basically, goes through that really well. But it's really important to understand where you want to focus. Every, like an example is I haven't picked up a phone call in probably 7 years that I don't know the number to. I mean, unless it's a 317 number where I live, and it could be, somebody I that is a doctor or whatever, that I don't ever pick up the phone that I don't, because it's somebody trying to get on your schedule that you didn't invite in, spam emails, whatever, just delete, don't even, don't respond back. It's just protect your time, and then take that and focus it on things that you either enjoy or are going to further, something that you can work on to better yourself or better people around you, or, better what you're working on, and so I just take that. I think people kind of think that's maybe sometimes a little rude or cold, that kind of thing, but it's not meant to be that at all. It's just hey, we've got 30 minutes scheduled, let's spend it wisely.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really important. I think, and what's interesting too is that companies like Hubstaff, other remote companies in general, we all kind of implement these tools that allow for immediate communication, and it can be completely bombarded every single day. So I know you kind of is it email that you would prefer to kind of be reached out to with certain things, so you can kind of prioritize when to get to those things?
I usually say email, or, basically summarize. And Jared's been saying that to me a lot lately. He's been shutting me down lately, telling me to, hey, why don't you give it to me in a more concise way so I can get it, in one stop and understand better. So, but that, it's good feedback. And so it's the same way, it works the same way. And I think that as Jared's, Jared took over as CEO, maybe 6 months ago, something like that, maybe 8, something like that. As he's kind of, and even as, that has taken place, over the 8 months, it's very obvious that he's taken more of an approach where it's it's a more, I need to manage my schedule I've got a lot going on. There's a lot to think about, and I really need to manage my schedule and put the top-notch things into it, and then basically into your schedule. I mean, and then basically, focus on those, to give those things the focus they deserve when those, when as my schedule progresses. So it's very important to do that, I think. A lot of times people just get caught up in things that just don't matter. I mean, they could spend, you could spend, 3 or 4 days doing stuff that doesn't matter. And lots of times that's what I was talking about earlier regarding the priorities with your team. That's been, in a remote environment, especially, there's lots of times where the team doesn't exactly know what to work on. And you want to give, as a manager, freedom and flexibility to be creative. Kelvin, that in your job, we try to let we don't tell you how to do videos. You did this yourself. And so there's that aspect of it, but it's just really important that your team understands the right priorities to work on, or else they could be doing things that they think are the right things in their mind, but actually are not connected to the way that the company as a whole kind of needs things to get done in the order in which they need to get it done. So does it make any sense? Priority management is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that.
And
as a creative,
you need to do that in your personal life, and not in your personal life, but in the way you schedule your personal day. Not only just that you need to do the work that matters.
Yeah, I think so. And kind of as you kind of touched on that, your personal day. I think something that might be interesting for other people to hear too is kind of, do you have a structure for your personal day? Like when you for sure shut off working with Hubstaff projects, how do you guys maintain like a balance, a healthy life? I know that's something that's probably discussed really frequently, is like, how do you maintain a healthy balance when you're starting a business, because of how much that just bleeds into your personal time and how much time it absorbs in general. Jared?
Yeah. So this wasn't true in the first few years. I think in the very beginning, when you're starting a business, don't go into starting a business thinking that you're going to have work-life balance. That's impossible.
Right.
You're going to be throwing everything you have at it in the beginning. Nowadays, though, we are at a maturity level as a business that I have a more traditional work schedule. It's really, really a 9 to 5, 8:30 to 5:30 type of deal, maybe 9 hours a day at most. I try to stop for lunch in the middle of the day. It doesn't always happen. So, but it's pretty close to a traditional work day. And by 6 o'clock or 5:30, I'm done. And I'm not getting back on the computer again later in the evening, like I used to for many years. I don't do that anymore. Now I'm coaching little league teams and, watching my sons play travel ball. And, on the weekends, I don't touch the computer hardly. I don't think there are many weekends in the year that I'm doing actual work on the computer. There might be a rare exception, but for the most part, no.
Jared and I both had important distinction there. Jared and I both have families, young families, and we both realize how important it is that your kids are going to be, 15 years old before you know it. And they're, every year goes by, they get older and older, and they just take a lot. They need a lot of attention and love at this point in time in their lives. So that's, back in the day, actually, when they were like 1 year old, it was a little easier to slip away and work.
Yeah. And then the final thing is, not working means not working. That includes not looking at your notifications. And if anything, I have the opposite problem, because I don't even notice my watch buzzing on my wrist anymore. I don't notice the phone buzzing in my pocket anymore. It just happens so often that I don't even feel it anymore. And that's a good thing, because I am not looking at these notifications when I am not working. They are asynchronous notifications. They will be there for when I come back to work. So when I'm at the baseball field or it's my weekend, I'm not actually looking at any of these notifications. And sometimes I miss out on something that was time sensitive, but it's very rare. And if it were a real issue or emergency, then those people would find a more direct, synchronous way to get a hold of me.
I think that's really healthy. I think that's something I struggle with. Like, we have people in a lot of different time zones, right? So if I get a message from someone on Slack at like 8:30 at night, I have this impulse to just want to make sure I read it and I know what it is immediately. So I think kind of detaching from that at certain points is really important. But I like how you also covered maturity level of the business, kind of helping dictate the balance that you can have because of how much time is required early on in the development of your business. So I think that's great.
Well, then there's, the other thing is that in the beginning, especially in the beginning of a business, I mean, if you're not having fun doing it, if that challenge doesn't drive you, then you're probably not cut out. If you're struggling and you're not, I mean, people struggle, but I'm just saying, like, if they're not having fun with that challenge and trying to, like, get in there and, like, test and see and learn and try something new and try something new and try something new and try, what I mean? Like, that's what it's got to be. That's what it's going to be like. So it's like, if you're not having fun doing that, if that's not the kind of personality you have, then it's probably not, you're probably not going to be a great entrepreneur, because that's what it really takes.
Yeah, finding something that you're really, really passionate about. I think that's what it circles back to. So that time consumption is less of a concern, I guess, when it's something that you want to consume your entire day with, like Dave's saying. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Kind of circling back to the outline we kind of developed, these last couple things, I think they're very interesting. So one of the questions is, are you born with it? Is the entrepreneurial mindset, the entrepreneurial spirit and drive, is that something you're born with? I'm going to also link to a TED Talk right down below that kind of covers this in a very interesting psychological way. But getting your guys' opinions on this, is this something that you were just born with, you had an innate sense for, or is it something that kind of developed over a period of time?
I think for me, the answer is yes. I think this is something that you're born with. And the reason I say that is because you almost have to be masochistic. You have this, you're going to feel a lot of stress and a lot of pain going down this entrepreneurial road. Most entrepreneurs fail. This is not an easy thing to go do. So you could go become a doctor, you could become a lawyer. There are other ways to make a lot of money per year that are, I think, a more reliable way to make money, a more guaranteed way to make money. So there's got to be something that drives entrepreneurs, that makes them want to go out there and start something from nothing and go through the challenge and the hardship that is going to require. And for me, that was just always something I felt from an early age, that I wanted to go create. I want, like I was saying before, create something a lot of people are going to use that, kind of put my dent in the world. And I was going to go through whatever, fire needed to be gone through to be able to do that. And it certainly comes from within for me.
For sure. Dave, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, I think you are born with it. I don't think you're going to change. I'm not a believer that personalities generally change. I think they basically kind of stay the same. I mean, I am pretty much the same person I was when Jared first met me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I haven't changed. Your personality is personality. So you're either got that drive or you don't. But everyone is different, and there's many different ways to do it. And there's not one way to do it. I mean, there's very eclectic, for example, creative, I'm saying, that kind of person can be a great entrepreneur, but I think they still probably have that same drive. But if you don't have the drive, if you don't have that, like, attitude, then I don't think there's a creation of that attitude. There's a lot of ways. Some people are very process oriented, and they're very quiet and process driven, and that is their way of making it. And that's fine. Some people are very social and they're a people person, and they're, you can do it a lot of different ways. So there is not one thing but it's the care and the attitude that you need to have, regardless of how you make that kind of like a reality.
So the "Are you born with it" discussion kind of leads itself well to this bottom line section that we have closing out the blog. So the quote itself from our blog is, "Being a successful founder comes down to desire and confidence." So would you both like to elaborate a bit on what that statement means to you as we kind of round out the closing points of this video?
I think that's very accurate. I mean, I think that's extremely, there was that I forget what list it was. It was the list we talked about before, but there was something about not being afraid. And it's like, I have no fear about, I do have, that's not true. I understand business risks. And I try to do everything I can to avoid them. So I have fear in that regard, but, like, in terms of fear of, like, my failure or getting down on myself or, like, things like that, I mean, that's the way that I display confidence. Jared displays it more. I think sometimes like he's a very thought driven person and will think through things very deeply and then be very confident that we're going on the right path because it's very well thought through, planned out, that kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, I think that statement is very, very true.
Jared, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree. I think the desire part we've covered pretty thoroughly so far. You've got to have that. Let's check that box as number one. But number two, the confidence. If you're the captain of the boat and you're like, hey, are we pointed in the right direction, guys? What do you think? Should we steering over here? What are we going to do next? Like, no, you have to be comfortable being the guy that's going to make the final call. You're taking input from people, but you've got to then make the decision. And if you're second guessing yourself or not confident in making those decisions, you're not the right person to be doing it. And I think, those people, Dave and I, right or wrong, we're actually, pretty confident in when we give our answer. We're like, yeah, I believe it thoroughly that is the right answer. And I think that sometimes is more important than if it is right or wrong. Because like we were saying earlier, a lot of these decisions, you don't have to get them just right. It's not like you have to nail the bullseye with every one of them. It is make the decision in a timely manner that's reasonable to the level of impact that it's going to have and be confident in that, because that confidence is going to inspire the rest of your team. You don't want to be that captain that everybody is doubting, should that be the person behind the wheel? That's not going to end well.
Guys, I think this has been incredibly helpful. Kind of closing this out, the last thing I had kind of outlined here is if there's any final message or anything you would want to tell anybody watching kind of at the beginning of their journey, is there anything that you would want to say to them or anything you could offer, Dave?
For me, it would be to basically, looking at from a standpoint of a new entrepreneur or somebody that hasn't done before, what things to, do before they start, and my number one thing is basically to it's going to sound odd, but basically reduce your debt, reduce your living expenses. So don't be, out there getting fancy cars and, use your money. You should look at your investment. You should want to invest money into your business because you think it's going to have an ROI and a versus like things and, vacations and country clubs and that kind of thing. So if you're a big spender, it's going to, it's going to be a problem when you can't make payroll, So, especially in those early years to give it, 24 months, that kind of thing. So, that would be my advice, is basically to kind of like, go into this, comfortable that your living expenses are under control, and basically probably live for a year without, income.
I think that's really practical. I was kind of wondering if you were going to say killer instinct in there somewhere too, but I think that's really practical advice. Jared, what do you got?
Yeah, I would say this kind of goes along with what we started at the top with, which is, not getting too married to your concept. I would say go around and pitch pitch what it is, give your elevator pitch to 10, 20, 40 different people, mention it to everybody that friends and family, and gauge their reaction and be willing and open to see, receive that feedback. Because I think a lot of people, most of the people that I've seen when they are giving their pitch, it's not very concise. They haven't been able to boil it down to one or two sentences, which that's a red flag, because I think they don't understand it well enough. If it takes that much time to explain, then your chances of getting the general public to adopt it is not very high. And then number two, they don't recognize the patterns and the type of feedback they get. And granted, a lot of those people may not be the target customer. I get that, but their general thought or feedback is going to show you a pattern. And you've got to be willing to recognize that. And there's strengths and weaknesses to all of these concepts, and recognize what those weaknesses are. And if there are too many of them, move on to the next concept.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. I think those are great closing thoughts. It's been very insightful speaking with you today. If you have any questions that you would like to ask Dave and Jared directly, feel free to leave a comment right down below the video and we'll make sure you get a response. Thanks again, guys, for your time, and I'm sure the channel will be seeing more of you in the very near future. And there you have it, everyone. Huge thank you to Dave and Jared for taking time out of their days to offer up such valuable insight. If you found this video helpful, feel free to hit that thumbs up right down below. And if you are new here, consider subscribing to the channel so you're notified of any future video uploads. Also, as I've said earlier in the video, there is a link down below in the video description to a detailed blog post if you would like to check that out. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment right down below and we will get back to you. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll talk to you in the next one.